Welcome everybody to another episode of OP Radio. We've got two very special guests with us here today for a special edition of OP Radio. I'm going to go ahead and just let them introduce themselves. If you don't know who they are, maybe we'll let Mr. Ben go first.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Thanks for having me. I'm Ben, one of the co-founders of Optimism. And if you didn't catch, I should post music in my free time.
And hey, everyone, I'm Jesse, creator of Base. And in my free time right now, I just work on bringing things on chain, bringing the world on chain. But otherwise,
Jesse's like, what's free time, Ben? I'm a slacker.
No, otherwise I like to go running. That's probably my biggest hobby.
Oh, I didn't know that about you, Jesse. That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm about to go for a run after this space.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm a kind of like run every day type of person. So big part of my life for sure.
Awesome. Well, in case you missed it, y'all, we released some important announcements today, and we're going to go over that in more depth and detail from two of the key architects here on the space today. So I think the way I'd like to get this started, let's just take a step back. I'd like to direct this question at Jesse. Jesse, Base Mainnet has been live for over about a week now. Maybe in your words, I'd just like to maybe have you explain what is Base for the people who may not know.
Yeah. So for those who are listening in and don't know what Base is, but are in this space, which I imagine is a small set of people, but Base is an Ethereum layer.
But you never know who could be listening later on.
You never know who's listening later on. Base is an Ethereum layer 2. It's open, permissionless. It's built on the OP stack in collaboration with Optimism. It's incubated by Coinbase. And our mission is to bring the next million developers and the next billion users on chain. We launched the test net in February, spent 4 months just hammering that, making sure that we were as hardened as possible and making sure that we could launch a mainnet in a decentralized structure. And we launched the mainnet 2 weeks ago. We've been kind of participating in this whole movement of on-chain summer for the last few weeks, which has been really fun. Today is Optimism Day in on-chain summer, which has been exciting. I got to talk with Benji and the team earlier on our kind of on-chain summer stories. And yeah, we're just excited to be building the future of the internet with y'all.
Absolutely. And Jesse, I've heard that you say this ambitious goal before, which is bring a billion users on chain. I wonder if we could just take a step back. And I want to ask you, why is that important? Like, why do we want to bring a billion people on chain?
Yeah. And I think, this is, there's the kind of like meta reason or the abstract reason and then the specific reason. The abstract reason is we think that when people come on chain, or the evidence suggests that when people come on chain, they're going to have increased economic freedom, and that's going to make the world a better place. I think like tactically, anecdotally, like I every day talk to people, and what I hear from them is coming on chain changed their lives. Whether that's an artist who was previously working a desk job who could now make money from selling their digital art on chain, or a musician who could do the same thing and earn more than their Spotify streamings, or a person who has never had access to a real stable financial system and now has access to a whole host of financial products, including stable coins and Ethereum, that enable them to build a better business and to take care of their money better and support their family better. I think fundamentally what we're seeing is that this new platform is a positive force for good in everyday people's lives. And we want to make it so that everyone in the world has access to that and everyone in the world can benefit from it.
Yeah, the way I kind of think about it is like on-chain, and you've said this before, Jesse, but on-chain is the next online, but with greater sovereignty.
That's exactly right. I think before the online era, we were all just getting talked at, right? The news and the movies, like everything was one way. You could really just read. And then we all got online, and for the first time, we could also write. Like we could share our stories with the world. But everything that we were doing was still getting written into a massive corporation that took the control away, took the ownership away, whether it was Facebook or Twitter or Google or TikTok. We gave up ownership of our creativity. And I think in this new on-chain era, for the first time, we can read, we can write, and we can own. And the creativity, the products we build, the businesses we build, the things that we build, the identities we build, when we put them on chain, they remain ours. And that is this fundamental shift that we think is going to transform the world for the better and really bring about the next era of the internet.
Oh, I love the way you phrase that. And man, that gets me excited. Okay, so Jesse, I wonder if we could just go over, has there been any early victories or wins? I know Mainnet has been open for a week or so, but what have you seen as far as traction? What are you excited about personally over the last week?
I think that we've kind of been blown away We set a bunch of goals at the beginning of the quarter in terms of, activity, builders, economic kind of value flowing into base. And we broke all the goals in the first 2 weeks. One thing that I was really proud of was 2 days ago, we crossed Ethereum. So we did more transactions on base than Ethereum did 2 days ago. The same day, all L2s did 5x more transactions than Ethereum. And I think one just data point to share is 2 years ago, like literally exactly 2 years ago, we were doing on L2 1/100th of the transactions of Ethereum. And today, 2 years later, we are doing 5x the transactions of Ethereum. That's a 500x increase over the last 2 years. And if you go to l2beat.com and look at the chart of activity growth, what you see is that it's just up and to the right in kind of like the greatest growth curve that I've ever seen in crypto. And I think I'm just so excited and grateful for Base to be getting to contribute to that and getting to play our part in growing Ethereum layer 2, growing the Superchain, and bringing the world on chain.
Jesse, I'm curious, did this early activity beat even your wildest expectations? Were you surprised?
There's a part I'm like an optimist. And so I would say there was a part of me that was holding out hope that like we would bring hundreds of millions of people on chain this summer. like really it would all come together and the
so you were being
next
even
bull
more
market
optimistic.
was going to start and like everything was just going to go locked and loaded. I probably gave that like a 5% chance, but there was some part of me that was like, there's a chance that happens. Clearly that hasn't happened. But I think beyond that, like the 95 like best case scenario that I was thinking about in the absence of that, this has far and away exceeded my expectations. I think we've been so grateful and just excited about the way the community has responded, the number of like products that have launched. And I think the thing that has probably made me the most happy is it just feels like people are having fun on chain for the last few weeks. And a lot of that's around Base, whether it's basepaint.xyz, where you have all these pixel artists all around the world creating art, or Storybase, where people are telling stories, or Friend Tech, where people are, getting to connect with their friends in private group chats. There's like, it feels like a lot of energy just around creativity and fun and, using this new platform to create things that people just want to interact with because they're awesome. And to me, that feels a lot like the early days of the internet and when the internet really started working with like Tumblr and I just I feel like that's the energy we want. That's the energy we need. We want to be creating more fun on chain, and we're just glad to be a part of that.
I love how you were even more optimistic. So, aim for the stars and reach the moon, I guess, as they say. That's great.
100%.
We're all optimistic here, Mac. It's got to go that way. Well, I want to ask Jesse another question, which is basically like, I'm very curious for I think I had a similar thing where like it was clear that Base was going to be something big, and it's very exciting to see that come to fruition. I'm curious also like what some of the like what some of the surprises are outside of that. Like what is the next big like what have we learned from this that like we as a community can improve with the base, from the Base launch? Are there things standing out to you that's like, oh man, we've learned something big here?
I mean, I think that the big thing that stands out to me is that we just still have a lot more work to do. Like, I'm so excited about the progress and momentum and growth that we've seen, but I also, spent 30 minutes on Monday night onboarding my whole extended family to Base and doing on-chain summer and getting them to kind of experience that. That's from my 23-year-old cousin to my 95-year-old grandfather. It's like 15 people. And most of those people had never owned crypto in a self-custodial wallet before. And we'd done a lot of work over the last 6 months to make that easy, but it was still too hard. I feel like it's gotten 10x better over the last year, but we still need to make it another 10x better to make it really the case that someone can go from never having interacted with crypto to seeing something they want to do on chain and being able to do that in less than 60 seconds. And so I think my big takeaway is this is day one. We now have the technology in order to build incredible product experiences with low-cost layer 2s, with better wallets and wallet infrastructure, with identity stuff that's starting to come online. But I think we now need to kind of put all those pieces together and keep refining them day over day until that experience for a new person and an experience for people who've been using crypto every day is just totally seamless. And so that's what I'm now focused on, kind of turning my eye towards. It's like, how do we just create that feedback loop and keep iterating until these products are really, really incredible?
Hell yeah. I'm so ready for Coinbase wallet based synergy to just explode. It's going to be unreal, I think.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it today.
Absolutely.
We just had an all hands for the whole Coinbase company today. You know, it's like 4,000 people, and like on-chain summer and base was a big part of it. And, you know, the big message that we shared with the company was kind of exactly what I just said. We're off to an awesome start, but one of our big learnings here is like, we have a lot more work to do to make all these things great. And I think there's just so much energy right now inside of Coinbase to do that work and to prioritize the small fixes and the big fixes that make all these experiences just totally fly. And candidly, like, that energy wasn't there a year ago. It maybe wasn't even there 6 months ago, but having this new platform and having this kind of reason for us to make that push and make that investment, I think is catalyzing a massive change inside this, you know, large public company, and is having a really, really positive impact. So grateful to have the opportunity to do this and to be working with y'all to make this all happen.
Absolutely. Moving right along here, I want to hear it from Ben. Ben, I'm not sure people fully understand just how big Base joining the Optimism Collective is. I'd love to hear from your perspective, from the Optimism Collective's perspective, what Base joining the Superchain means.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think something that you said earlier, Jesse, that really resonated with me was talking about Base did crazy numbers, and the sum of all L2s did even crazier numbers, you know? And I think most fundamentally, what the introduction of Base means for us as a collective is I mean, I think very similar to the message of the groundwork's been laid, it's time to take it to the next level. You know, that's true on the product side. That's also true on the infrastructure and scaling side, you know? Ultimately, everything that we do with optimism, it should be centered around positive sum behavior. Like, if you take the perspective that the collaborative and coordination tools that trustless chains bring to the table, part of the optimistic outlook on what that's going to do is bring in positive sum outcomes where the sum of the parts is, you know, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right? So ultimately, most fundamentally, what Base, I think, really just makes crystal clear is the fact that it's time for us to have a bunch of chains, right? Which is very, very exciting. Like, we've now had multiple L2s break the Ethereum transactions per day, you know, mark. And the next step is to get lots of them doing that all the time. You know what I mean? So ultimately, it's about, like, I think the most important thing is that it's about positive sum behavior. And if we're really going to take crypto to the masses, no one chain is going to do it. And it wasn't going to be OP mainnet. And it's going to be, you know, it takes a collective. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to answer that question. To me, the most fundamental piece of it is going positive sum and getting a bunch of parts that add up to be greater than the whole. And that's what I think we're seeing in spades with Base. I mean, it's just awesome.
Yeah, and I'm curious also to hear from you, Ben. You know, when this collaboration was in its early phases, when you were thinking about it, I know there were probably some questions that it prompted that needed to be answered. Could you share some of those questions that needed to be answered before, you know, we could reach a day like today?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think there were certainly a number of questions for us to figure out. I think the most important one was like, is it time to do this positive sum thing? You know what I mean? Like, fundamentally, what we're building is a public good. And that means that anyone can take it and run with it and do whatever they want with it, right? So one part of the question was like almost like an identity crisis of like, oh, Optimism for a very long time now has been this one singular chain, and there's no stopping it. That is going into a world of multiple chains, right? And so one question was just like, how do we, you know, effectively, how do we embrace that as a community? And I mean, I guess even a more fundamental question was, should we embrace that? And our answer was a resounding yes. And then the question was like, how do we embrace that? What does that really mean? And the answer is the super chain in some ways, right? Like, you know, Carl went up on DevCon, you know, my co-founder, DevCon, and gave the talk on the super chain and said, there's going to be a bunch of these chains that are all going to work together. But I think one thing I'm incredibly thankful for, to be able to work with someone like Jesse and the rest of the Base team on, is like actually turning that from like theory into practice, right? Like, we actually had to figure out, how is this going to work, right? yeah. So to me, it was just like, basically it was, okay, we're going multi-chain. Are we going to embrace that? Yes, absolutely. What on earth do we do to embrace it? What does that even look like? And so, yeah, I think we're making big strides to answer that.
Yeah, and I would love to hear from Jesse. So Jesse, we released some information today about sort of the details of this partnership, but I would like to just ask you, what in your mind is the glue that's holding this together? Or in other words, what are the sort of underlying fundamental values that enabled us to answer these questions together?
Yeah, well, I'd say it's primarily that we're based and optimistic. Like that, that's maybe too memey. But I do think that like optimism is a big part of it, and like a fundamental belief that if we work together, we can do things that no one else has ever kind of believed are possible. Maybe break that down a few levels further. I think one thing is like this positive sum nature, where it's like if we want to go far, we should be going together. There was an alternate version of history where Coinbase went and said, "Hey, we're going to build our own L1, or we're going to build an L2, and we're going to, just kind of go off on our own." And we didn't do that. Instead, we said, "Hey, let's create based on the OP stack. Let's do it in collaboration with Optimism. Let's build this Superchain because we think that's going to take us further than where we could go if we were just going to do this by ourselves." So I think that's the first one. I think the second big one is that we really, I think, both believe that decentralization really matters. And you see this in the kind of news that we're sharing today. Like, we're not launching Base at a point where there's any one party, including kind of the base core team at Coinbase, that could violate key kind of decentralization primitives and commitments that we're making. And that was a really, really important thing for us. And it felt like in working with Optimism, we could actually make that commitment to decentralization really mattering. And then I think finally, the last thing is this kind of belief that like the users come first. And the most important thing that we can be doing to, support users in the next generation of this internet is creating Base and OP Mainnet and the Superchain in such a way that we preserve the open, permissionless nature of Ethereum block space. Because at the end of the day, that is what enables everyone everywhere, regardless of where you are born, regardless of where you live, to have access to the same things. And that's that level playing field that, going back to the beginning of our conversation, puts everyone on a level playing field, gives them increased economic freedom, and I think will make their lives and the world a better place. So that kind of value alignment, I think that was really what has made this collaboration really possible. And I guess maybe one last note that I'll add on to that is I think one of the things that has really characterized our collaboration thus far is a humbleness in that we don't have all the answers. Like we, worked on this law of chains and Base contributed to it. And we shared the first version of that a week ago or 2 weeks ago. But that's just the first version. And we need input. We need feedback from the community. All of the things that we're doing right now, I think it's coming from a place of prioritizing users, prioritizing decentralization, prioritizing that positive sumness. But it's coming with an attitude of this is our best starting point that we believe in, but also it's a place that we want feedback on. And I think that openness to learning, the openness to being wrong, the openness to believing that we can do better with contributions and feedback and perspectives from the community, that really has made it so with the value alignment, we've been able to really collaborate and work well together.
Yeah, very well put. Obviously, a lot of details to be hashed out, but yeah, just as you said, Jesse, because of that underlying value alignment, user first, the importance of decentralization, those details got answered, right?
I think,
yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Jesse, I vibe with that immensely. I feel like it made me realize one question that I didn't say in the beginning, which was actually like pretty important to nail down for us, was like, kind of, do we trust these guys? And to be quite honest, like, what we are doing with the Superchain and with the OP stack is not going to be universally shared. And there are people that are going to take the decentralized software that we've built, wrap it in degrees of hidden centralization, and really just be trying to like land grab and not actually do the damn thing that we're setting out to do. So yeah, I just want to express a massive gratitude to like Jesse and the rest of the Base and Coinbase teams to like really taking this seriously. Like Jesse talked about the humility. I think it's not even a given that a large Fortune 500 company is going to understand the value propositions and like the fundamental like good nature of decentralization. So I'm really appreciative that like just y'all's team personally was like ready to go on that, and then we could build something.
Yeah, we're blessed to have been collaborating. One super team, one super dream, building the Superchain.
I think the moment we knew was when, Jesse, you approved the Lil B meme during the base launch.
Yeah, the Lil B meme was a good one. It was very, very good. I love that.
That's when we said, oh, this guy's all right. Okay, so getting into the details a little bit more, I think people are definitely curious to hear. I would love to hear from Ben on sort of what the details of this partnership entail. Jesse mentioned the law of chains. Maybe we could start there, Ben. Do you want to take a crack at that, at explaining what is this law of chains thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing to say, of course, is that it is a V0.1, just like Jesse said. It's going to be critical to get community feedback. And it is not something that is an official governing document of the Optimism Collective yet. It is a proposal from the Optimism Foundation to update it. Okay, with that being said, what is it? So, I spoke a little bit earlier about the, sort of multi-chain identity crisis of optimism is like one extreme way that you could call this, which is basically, how do we understand our role as a collective when we move from a world with one chain to having many chains? And ultimately, where that answer lies for us is that it's a responsibility for the community to shift from basically governing a single protocol, OP Mainnet, to governing a shared standard that is used by many protocols, like Base and like OP Mainnet and potentially others. So most fundamentally, I would say that is the sort of fundamental answer to the like optimism identity crisis of what is optimism becoming. Ultimately, it's like has to evolve from having a single implementation of a chain to being a standards body that governs a standard that is shared by many. So, I think that's the setup. And then to the question of like, what ultimately is the law of chains? What I say there is really not the bulk of the law of chains. Really what the bulk of the law of chains is talking about the governance implications. And really, I think the governance responsibilities that the community has to uphold for this all to work. So what do I mean by that concretely? What I mean is that when you move to a situation where there's a single standard being governed, the number of stakeholders go up, right? We're now in a position, right, where like Base is a very, 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 and the entire Base community is a very, very extremely important stakeholder within the Optimism ecosystem. And there's a responsibility that comes with governing upgrades to another chain like that. And it's basically to give those stakeholders the protections and what they deserve. So that's a little bit about what the law changes, and effectively what it does is that it tries to enumerate all of those stakeholders, and then it defines what we think are the critical things that we have to be neutral about, and basically that we have to protect for the sake of all of these new stakeholders that are joining. So the number one thing is that the users should come first, right? That was like, Jesse mentioned already, and that's like a key section of the law of chains, is that it's critical to protect the users above all else. That is like the true essence of the decentralized block space that we're here to produce. But it goes beyond that, right? It's also incredibly important, for example, for an entity like Base itself to be defined, which isn't any one particular user. It's like the summoner. We call it the chain governor. It's, the people that are running one of these chains. And so it's very important for those people to also be, effectively protected and have things like their own economic sovereignty and have the ability to make reasonable protocol decisions about their particular chains. So yeah, there's a little bit of a ramble, a little bit of overview. Basically, the TLDR, we move from governing one chain to governing a standard shared by many. And there's a whole lot of responsibilities and, protections that is critical for governance to uphold when we move to that world. And that's what the law of chains tries to talk about.
Thank you for that, Ben.
Anything you'd add there, Jesse?
No, I think that's exactly right. And I think from the base perspective, one of the things that was really important to us about the law of change was just ensuring this commitment to neutrality. And, we talked about this from the Coinbase perspective today with the base neutrality principles. But what the law of change really does is it creates a structure where we can really feel confident that we're going to be able to preserve that open permissionless nature of the block space that is available via base. And that was really important to us. And, we're really grateful for the work that the Optimism team has done to make that possible. And I think it's something we really stand behind.
Yeah. Shifting gears here once again, Jesse, I think something that's very underrated about this collaboration is Base joining the Optimism Collective as a core developer for the OP stack. I'd love to hear from you, like what some of the recent work has been or what your focuses are there.
Yeah, so we have been contributing to the OP stack as a core developer and trying to just figure out how do we make as much progress on scalability, security, and decentralization as possible. So a few things that have really stood out to us is we've landed a bunch of changes to opt-get and opt-node scalability and reliability. A bunch of that was from our kind of testnet learnings, but there's more kind of coming every day. It's been awesome to have the team kind of like running these nodes in production now and finding fixes, upstreaming them, and making that all much more performant. We're also working alongside the Paradigm team on an implementation of OpRef, also in collaboration with folks from OP Labs. This OpRef is a second client from an execution client perspective for the OP stack. It's going to increase diversity, which enables us to have more resilience. It's also going to enable us to have a second fault proof when fault proofs are ready so that we can have more confidence in that system and get to a stage 2 rollup faster. And then two other things on the security side. One is we've been helping shape kind of the next generation security council for the Superchain, which will be replacing the kind of 2 of 2 nested multisig that we have today for Base, which builds on the Optimism Foundation multisig and the Base upgrade multisig. And then also we just open sourced this thing called Pessimism. Pessimism's a monitoring tool for the OP stack, for any OP stack chain that can detect anomalies and enable really rapid responses to them. That's something we built internally at Coinbase. It's something that I think a lot of other OP stack teams are starting to use. And we're just really excited to be making that kind of open source contribution back to the overall security of the OP stack and the Superchain.
Love it. Sounds like just a lot more firepower towards the progressive path towards decentralization. Love to hear it.
Yeah. Positive. Talk about positive stuff. Like we talked about that in terms of activity, but the exact same is true in terms of the core development, right? Like having an extremely high caliber, like world class, set of engineers at Coinbase and at Base, being able to accelerate all of these roadmaps is like the essence of the optimistic public goods vision coming through. So it's absolutely awesome.
Yeah, and I know this is just today. There's standing on the shoulders of giants, right? There's been a lot of people, a lot of teams who have helped contribute to where we are today. Any teams or people in particular, Jesse or Ben, you'd like to shout out here on OP Radio?
I mean, the number one is just the Ethereum community, right? I mean, we've talked a lot about in the past about Bedrock, which was sort of the multi-chain ready release of the OP stack, that Base was able to build on. And one of the core philosophies that went into that code base is the notion of the minimal diff, right? So basically what I mean by that is that the fewer lines of code that you write, the less of a chance there is for bugs, the easier it is to maintain, the more compatible it is with the rest of the ecosystem, like deep tooling and integrations. And I just think, this in itself isn't like a global network of contributors to the Ethereum ecosystem that we are shamelessly able to use. And moreover, our entire strategy is to use as much of it as possible and change as little as possible. So for me, it's, people like the Geth team and all of the other clients out there, like without any of that, none of this would work.
Yeah, huge plus one to that. I feel, we started contributing to Ethereum before we realized we were going to be building Base. And I got the chance to work with a bunch of the core devs on EIP 4844, and I'm really excited for that to ship later this year. And I think the level of hard work and determination and commitment that the Ethereum core devs and the whole Ethereum community has put into Ethereum is really just so inspiring. And I think it served as the foundation on top of which we started collaborating with the Optimism team and started thinking about how we could scale Ethereum with Base. And so I feel so grateful to the Ethereum community for everything that they've enabled over the last many years. A couple other folks to shout out. Huge shout out to the Optimism Foundation and everyone there, the Optimism Collective. Everyone's been so welcoming and kind and positive. And, figuring out all these things is never easy. It's always a little bit of a challenge to figure out the details. And I just feel like people have been so optimistic and collaborative. I feel really grateful for that. Also, the OP Labs team, they've helped us figure out how to run Base, how to make that work. They've been on call and helped us solve issues when we've had them. And I feel really grateful to everyone there. And then I think I'll give a final shout out to all of the teams that are scaling layer 2, both inside and outside the Superchain. I think that there's so much important work that's happening, from ZK proofs and ZK EVMs to the recent work that Arbitrum's been doing with Bold, to the progress that Polygon's been making and figuring out how to move the POS chain to a Validium. Just like, this is the work. It's the work of bringing the world on chain by scaling Ethereum via layer 2. And it's not something that any one team can do. It's not something that any one superchain can do. It's something that's going to take all of us. And so I'm just grateful for everyone who's been putting in that work. And then last shout out is to everyone who's here and everyone who's believed in Base over the last many weeks and the last many years, or last many months, I guess, quarters. Like, when we first started working on Base, we didn't really know what to expect from people's response. I personally had a lot of fear, I think, that people were going to kind of like reject us and say, hey, like, no, you can't do that. Like, this isn't a good contribution. And I think, in fact, like, the opposite's been true. Folks have been so incredibly positive and welcoming. They've been supportive. They've believed. They've been willing to like let us make mistakes and fail and learn and try again. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone for doing that and for making this all possible and for giving me and the whole Base team the like foundation of belief that enables us to keep building every day.
Here, here. And I'd like to shout out Jesse's grandpa for getting on chain. Somebody send that man an NFT.
He's got one already, but we got to give him another one.
He needs more.
Does he want my Pepe? Maybe he might not get it.
I don't think he's going to get
it. Okay, guys, before we wrap this up, Jesse, we're currently in the midst of a very cool initiative showcasing a lot of creatives, creators, artists, and builders on chain. Can you just let folks know about On-Chain Summer and how they can get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. On-Chain Summer, the whole idea is like get on-chain this summer. You can go to onchainsummer.xyz. Today there's super awesome mint from Optimism because it's Optimism Day, in case you can't tell. So excited about that. It's Optimistic and On-Chain by Ryan Hawthorne. And then every day through the end of August, there's one cool thing to do on-chain, and then a bunch of other stuff that the community is building that's also cool to do on-chain. And so you can go to onchainsummer.xyz, get a wallet, and get on-chain. Super excited to, do the next 8 days of On-Chain Summer and then go immediately into On-Chain Fall, followed by On-Chain Winter, followed by On-Chain Spring, until we're back to On-Chain Summer. I think our general feeling is that every season from here on out is all about bringing the world on chain, and we're just excited to get to it.
On-chain winter sounds worse than it is. It's going to be amazing.
On-chain Christmas, on-chain Hanukkah,
on-chain
holidays.
Season. Oh yeah, dude! Oh my god! Oh, there's wow. Holiday NFTs feels like an underexplored space.
I did a last holiday season. Wilson Cusack, who's now on the Base team, built a white elephant game that was fully on chain, where you could you would mint it. Everyone would get to generate an NFT and it would be randomly generated in that game, and then you could either keep that or you could steal from someone else. And it was awesome. And I actually used it to onboard my whole family, or my wife's family. And everyone had so much fun. It was like a cool little thing. It was way too expensive. I think we paid like $300 of gas on ETH to do it. But this year, it'll be on Base and it'll be basically free.
Forget about unisocks. How about some unistockings? We need some stockings.
Yeah, respect. That was good.
All right, guys. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Ben and Jesse. Always a pleasure to have you on OP Radio. And for the listeners, if you want to follow up with a lot of the information we went over, during this episode, go ahead and head to optimism.mirror.xyz. Got a lot of great resources for you there. But thank you both, and thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your Thursday.
Thanks, y'all.